Hey everyone, I'm recording an extra video to walk you through my solutions to the project 1, part 2, the diagnosis one. Okay, well, I have already loaded my solution. Let me skip all the testing cases and we start from here, right? Well, this is my first function and there's really nothing to talk about. I just want to print the welcome message line by line, right? So I'm using several print statements, but if you want to use only one, that's also okay. And by the way, well, the way that I attack this problem is that I want to try to separate the whole functionality into smaller pieces. And for example, the very first piece should be, well, just display the welcome information, right? So I want to separate this part and put it into a function. And well, you haven't seen the color yet, but later, well, when I start the main body of the program, and then I'm gonna call this function, okay? And the second function is kind of interesting. Well, this is the diagnosis. And for the diagnosis, I need 4 pieces of information. I need the temperature, the congestion, the aches, and rash. Okay, so those are 4 pieces of information I need. And then based on those 4 pieces of information, and I will decide whether this person is healthy, is cold, flu, measles, or COVID. Okay, and well, as you can see, well, for the congestion, the aches, and the rash, well, I'm not doing any validation here, right? So I'm assuming that the temperature is a number, and then the congestion, aches, and rash, I'm not considering upper cases or lower cases. So in this function, I'm assuming that I'm living in perfect world, and for all the 4 parameters, and they are valid. And then how am I going to deal with the invalid inputs? I'm not worrying about that for now when I'm writing this function. But before I send those 4 parameters into this function, I do have to take care of the invalid inputs, okay? And then based on the combinations of those 4 attributes, and then I'm going to either return healthy, cold, flu, measles, COVID, or uncertain. And I put that into a if, elif, else structure. Okay, so this is my second function. I use 4 pieces of information and do the diagnosis. Okay, and the next part. Well, I also want to separate this part into a function because I need to deal with the invalid day and month. Okay, well, and I'm taking 2 parameters, month and the day. Say, for example, the month can be 10 and the day can be 20, so that is October 20th. And then based on the month and the day, I'm going to tell you if that is a valid date or not. So if it is a valid date, and then I'm going to return a true. Otherwise, I'm going to return a false. So there are only 2 possible values. 2 possible return values in this function. Okay, and then I have to separate the cases into several months. And for example, well, the most obvious one should be and the month. Well, the month should be greater than 0, and then the day should be greater than 0, and then the month should be smaller than 10. Well, those are the obvious things. And if you receive a month to be a 15, that is wrong. Or if the day is a 0, and then it is wrong, right? And the next step, well, I want to put the January, March, and May, and July, and August, and October, and December together because for those months, and they all have 31 days. So, well, for those months, well, as long as the day is not greater than 31, and then I'm okay. However, if the day is indeed higher than 31, and then that is invalid. Well, and then, well, there are several months and they have 30 days. And for those months, 4, 6, and then, well, September and November, I just put them together. And if the day is greater than 30, and I'm going to have some problem, that's it, false. And for February, and then if the day is greater than 29, and then we have the problem. Well, the reason is that we are assuming the year is 2020, so we have the day 29 in February. Okay, and otherwise, well, if the current day and the date and the month, they pass all the possible checks, I'm returning a true because then this means all the possible invalid cases have already been passed or checked. and then I'm going to return a true saying, okay, this date is good. So this is another function I have done, okay? Well, I'm just trying to extract some of the complicated code into functions to make the main body of my solution a little bit shorter. Well, it is still long. Okay, well, and now I'm starting the main body of my solution, and the start part is just print the welcome information, and then when I print the welcome information, you can see there's no parameter here. I'm not returning anything. I'm just displaying a header, right? And then, well, I get the input, and then I got the month and the day, and then, well, I'm separating the month and the day, and I'm assuming the year is 2020. And now, after I have already taken the month, the day, and then I have the year, now I want to send the month and day into the function is month day valid. Okay, so if the month day is valid, and then that will be a true, otherwise it will be a false. And well, based on whether it is true, well, if it is false, and then I'm going to print this is the invalid date, and then I'm going to do a exit 1 saying, there's already something wrong, and I'm not going to continue working on this problem. And okay, and the next part, we want to take the temperature, we want to take the congestion, ache, rash. Okay, so well, and then for the congestion, the ache and the rash, you can see, well, if I'm getting something not Y and not N, and immediately I'm going to print a invalid response, and then I'm going to exit. And the same thing for ache. So if I take an ache, which is not a Y, not an N, and then I'm going to say invalid input. And another thing is, well, as soon as I grab the input from the user, I immediately did a dot lower, and dot lower is a function we talk about when we talk about the building functions. I'm forcing that to be a lowercase y or a lowercase n, and since I have already done this part, and then in the rest of the code, I'm not worrying about the uppercases anymore, because even though the user gives me an uppercase, and after doing the dot lower, and then it will be a lowercase anyhow. So from now on, for the congestion, for the ache, for the rash, I'm only dealing with the lower cases. And I'm using this part of the code to do a check. Well, and if it is valid, and then nothing happens. If it is invalid, it will print invalid response, and then the program will shut down immediately. Okay, so after taking the temperature, congestion, ache, and rash, and now, and by the way, we have already validated all of them, right? So those 4 parameters are all good to go. And this means those 4 parameters, they can be sent to another function called diagnosis. Right? For diagnosis, remember we are taking 4 parameters, and what do we return? Let me visit that again. I'm returning strings. The string could be healthy, cold, flu, measles, COVID, or uncertain, right? So those, well, no matter what kind of decision it is, and I'm gonna return a string. Okay, so let me come back down here. So, and then I'm going to say decision equals the diagnosis with the 4 parameters. And now I'm having the decision as a string. Okay, and then the last part will be, well, if it is uncertain or measles, and we want the patient to come back 3 days later. Well, and the easiest thing we want to do is we take the day and then plus is 3, right? Well, the day plus is 3, that's the day 3 days later after the given date. Usually it works. For example, it's January the 2nd, and then the day plus 3, and it will give you January the 5th, and that's fine. Well, but the problem is, what if today is already January the 31st, and then 31 plus 3, we get 34. So we are going to tell the user you are going to return on January 34th, and that's not correct. So again, we want to fix the day, and we have to fix the day and the month. And how do we do that? Well, we want to check the month and the day again. So if we are in those months, remember we have 31 days. So if the return day is already greater than 31, and then we want to increase the months by 1, and then we want to reduce the return day by 31. So for example, if we want the user to return on January the 34th, and then there's no 34th, so we have to reduce the return day by 31. So 34 minus 31, that is 3, and then the months increase by 1, so that will give us 2. So that's February the 3rd. Okay, and we are doing the same thing for those months because they all have 30 days. And then we have to do that differently for the February, because February has 29 days in this year. Okay, and okay, here's another thing. Well, if we are already at the very end of this year, say we are at December 31st, and then we have to increase, when we increase the months by 1, we are going to have the months at 13. And months at 13 is not correct. So what do? We reduce the months by 12, and then we increase the year by 1. Okay? And then, well, we are finished all the diagnosis, and then we figure out, we have already figured out the return day. Okay, and the last part, we want to do the output. So we print the patient name, and then we print the date, and then the diagnosis, and that is the decision we have already received. And if the decision is uncertain or measles, and then we also print the return month, the return day, and the return year. So this is my solution on doing this part. And as you can see, I wrote more than 100 lines of code, and that's really a lot. Well, and the thinking of this, of designing this problem is, well, you want to separate the big problem into smaller parts so that you can do some divide and conquer. You don't have to solve everything at the same time, but if you can extract some part into a function, you solve that function, and then, well, you can easily skip that part when you are doing the main body of your solution. So in this way, you are doing divide and conquer, and you are making a big problem into several smaller problems. And hope this video can help you. Okay?